With no reinforcements available in Leh after the first trip, the troops started to get dispirited, which increased the chances of desertion in the ranks. The officers decided to pull back all their troops from the outskirts of Leh into the main town to strengthen the defense of the town as one strong unit. Meanwhile, the base at Srinagar started planning out troop deployments to strengthen defenses in Sonmarg, which was to be used as a base to launch attacks into Dras. As for the Manali-Leh link, the first column of Indian troops was dispatched from Manali towards Leh. The column had 6 officers and 151 soldiers along with some local guides. This was under the command of Major Hari Chand. As mentioned before, this was a very treacherous, onerous trek and would take the column weeks to months to reach Leh, if at all they were successful. The enemy at this time was just 27 kilometers away from Leh and was about to launch their first major assault into the town. It seemed like this was the final stand for the defense force at Leh. This is when, after 5 days of extremely bad weather, the weather cleared just enough for Srinagar to be able to fly a reinforcement of 6 officers and 77 troops of Gurkhas into Leh on May 30th, 1948. The enemy launched their attack into Leh on June 1st, and the additional troops available in the battlefield gave the defenders at Leh just enough strength to have a fighting chance to push back the assault. The enemy was pushed back the same day. It is interesting to note that it was very likely that the enemy would have taken Leh on May 22nd if they had just pushed harder after their initial success. But for some reason, they chose to wait and regroup. This gave the Indian side the much needed breathing space for setting their defenses, consolidating their forces, and the arrival of 2 iterations of reinforcements from Srinagar. Minor skirmishes continued in the outskirts of Leh in the first 3 weeks of June 1948. More reinforcements could not be sent out to Leh via air during this time, as they had to be directed to protecting Sonmarg from constant enemy attacks, as well as operations in Naushera region also needed troop deployment. Radio communication with the scouts via Manali were also lost during this time, with the chance that the expedition force was stalled, lost, or even worse, perished on the way. After the initial crisis at Leh on May 22nd, there was a second crisis there on June 26, 1948. The enemy had taken a couple of weeks to increase their strength in the outskirts of Leh, and with the strength of 600, they attacked Leh on June 26th. The defenders had received some reinforcements in May, but a lot of their supplies had been depleted during the skirmishes in the past few weeks. The reserves were enough to only slow down the enemy, not enough to push them back from taking Leh. The defenders were very well dug in and fought wave after wave of enemy assaults at their positions. The troops, after suffering constant assaults, were overstretched trying to defend their positions and requested air support. But air support could not be provided due to really bad weather all week. The defenders kept on fighting and pushing back the enemy assaults from their positions throughout that week. Despite all efforts being made by the defense forces, it seemed that by the first week of July, they would be overrun by the enemy. Leh was about to fall. The officers at Leh sent communication to Srinagar requesting reinforcements to avoid capitulation. Unfortunately, there were no good options for Leh at this time. Things were looking very bleak in Leh. That is when a miracle happened. The expedition force from Manali that had lost radio contact with the center found its way through the snowy mountains and reached Leh from the rear. The expedition force, led by Major Hari Chand, reached Leh on July 5th, 1948. This was no less than miraculous, considering the timing of their arrival. They reached Leh exactly when all options for them had been exhausted. These reinforcement troops had arrived from an avenue that had the least probability of succeeding out of all the three options. With this development, there was still hope for the Indian Defence Forces in saving Leh. Major Harichand and his troops quickly moved to the front and supported the defense efforts of the town. The enemy meanwhile accumulated around 1,000 troops around Leh for their next attack, while 200 regular troops and 200 militia were defending it from being taken over. Srinagar could not provide any more help from their side for at least 4 weeks, so troops at Leh were on their own for now. With no further expectation of reinforcements for a month, the defenders changed their tactics of engaging with the enemy. Instead of waiting for the enemy to attack them, they decided to take the fight to the enemy. This was using small, low-risk targeted raids in the enemy strongholds. The plan: take advantage of the element of surprise and cause attrition in the enemy and raise the troops' morale. July 18, 1948. This theory was tested by attempting multiple parallel raids in enemy camps. This turned out to be a very successful strategy because with this, the enemy halted their attack plans in an attempt to better organize their defenses. The fighting continued through July and the first 2 weeks of August. The troops at Leh, due to lack of reinforcements in the last 5 weeks, were again running short of ammunition, were at a point where the enemy's bigger numbers were close to overwhelming the defense positions. August 14th, 1948. This was the fall of Skardu, a major setback for the Indian side. With the fall of Skardu, Gilgit, Skardu, Kargil and Dras were all lost to the enemy. Leh was the sole pocket in the north and the east holding strong against the constant assault from the enemy. The Indian side now focused all their efforts in supporting Leh with whatever they had. Dakotas were sent in on August 15th and 19th with supplies and ammunition for the defense. August 23rd, 6 officers and 58 troops were flown in to increase the strength of the defense at Leh. Between August 23rd and August 30th, 350 more troops reached Leh from the newly created Manali-Leh track. And on August 30th, 123 more troops were flown into Leh. With this, there was significant force present at Leh, and it was very difficult for the enemy to take it. With more force present at Leh now, the Indian side could not only successfully defend Leh, but also could go on the attack against them. September 6th, 1948. This was the first time the Indian Armed Forces planned a surgical strike deep into enemy territory. This was led by Major Harichand. The objective of this operation was to go deep into enemy territory and locate the enemy's 3.7mm howitzer guns that were causing havoc for the Indian defenses, destroy those guns, and safely return to the base. Major Harichand selected his best 35 mountain climbers, got some ammunition and some dry rations for them to eat, and some mountain gear. The commandos left Leh on September 6th, trekked through the bad mountains and snowy terrain non-stop for 3 days, reached deep into enemy territory on September 9th, located the enemy howitzer gun teams, waited for the nightfall and attacked the teams in the night, taking out all the howitzer gunners and destroying all howitzer guns over there. The team, with the objective achieved, came back to Leh through the same path and reached base on September 15th, 1948. The success of this surgical operation proved the efficacy of such strikes to be used in future. The enemy made multiple attempts to take Leh, but all attempts were pushed back by the Indian side. At the same time, it was not strong enough to push the raiders out of the region. Stalemate was setting in at Leh.